Aloha. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Taketa-Wong. At today's event, we're going to be learning from an acupuncturist who focuses on mental and emotional well-being as well as physical. So, Mary Huang also has a fascinating personal story about what she learned from spending an extended time away from modern society. So, we'll get started in just a moment. Uh, my personal mission is to heal what ails people by finding and treating underlying causes of conditions so the symptoms are no longer present. As a naturopathic doctor, I can write prescriptions for drugs, but I'd rather write them for herbs and for healing foods. And being a Chinese medicine expert gives me a whole different set of tools that complements our Western system. And as a healer, my passion is to educate and empower people, as many people as we can, about how to become healthier and happier. And so Mary is she actually was one of my teachers while I was in school, and I'm really excited to have her here with us. She really shares that same vision and that same passion about helping people to become healthier and happier. So healthier people, happier world, right? Uh, for me personally, my specialty is the medical treatment of autism, ADHD, and other special needs. And I also treat some of the toughest adult conditions. Our other two doctors in our practice specialize in women's health, autoimmune diseases, weight loss, and other complex conditions. So we don't take new patients without a no-charge phone consultation first. We want to make sure that there is a good fit. Contact information is on our Facebook page. So, Mary Huang is a licensed acupuncturist and a Chinese medicine practitioner with a unique personal experience influencing her professional life. She has been in practice for 16 years, including a 9-year period wherein she co owned and managed an acupuncture and healing arts clinic. She left to spend 4 years living off the grid in the rainforest jungle of Costa Rica. Mary Huang moved to Honolulu in 2022 and founded Singing Tree Acupuncture. Her work includes acupuncture, Chinese herbs, homeopathy, bodywork, and energy work. She has found that most people's main concern is their physical health, but what they've often haven't been told is that our body is more than just the physical. It's also energetic. But before I ask you more about how energy influences our well-being, I'd like to take a sidetrack for a moment, and I'm sure that there are reasons why people leave modern society for a while, but I'm more interested in the things that you discovered from that, Mary. So could you share some of the main things you learned from the experience of living in the rainforest in Costa Rica for 4 years and how that has influenced your practice?
Sure. Aloha, Kat. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me here. And I'm very happy to be here to share some of the things I've learned from doing my energy healing work. So you asked me about Costa Rica. Prior to Costa Rica, I was living a pretty fulfilled life. I had a life partner of 15 years that I was really in love with. I had a bustling practice and I was doing the work that I loved and basically doing this healing energy work for helping people with their physical symptoms and getting really great results. Um, but as life happens, I went into a very challenging period in my life, and my partner and I split, and then I got really sick. I got really a severe allergy to an insecticide that was sprayed in my house. And for 2.5 years, I got really sick. And when I became that sick, I got to a point that I couldn't work anymore. So I was looking for a new chapter in my life. And so what I did was I sold the shares to my practice. I sold my house. I gave away all my belongings. And I got on a plane to Costa Rica with some clothes, some gear, and my bicycles. So obviously, by the time I got to Costa Rica, I was pretty exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally. Um, but the time that was given to me from my form business space do the deeper emotional work that I needed to do to transform my life. And now that deeper work is informing my own practice with helping other people heal. Um, and the reality is that if I don't, I was doing this kind of work with the emotional healing, but it was almost like life was asking for me to do it deeper, to really see the big effects that it can do when you're working on such levels of, like my whole life kind of being upheaval and having to start all over. It's like, well, yeah, I got it, but does it really work? you know? And so I can't really help people if I haven't had those experiences myself. So in a way, even though this was a really difficult time for me, it was a gift in a way, because it's a gift that I gave to myself and to the people that I'm working with now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really true, right? That a lot of times it's like those really difficult experiences. Those are the biggest learning experiences, and they're the most transformative for us, right? So, can you share a little bit more about what some of that deeper work was and what it entailed?
So how do I explain this? It's kind of like when we look at our society in our modern day, most of us are overwhelmed, stressed out, busy, really busy with our lives, trying to keep up with all the obligations and the things that we're meant to do to create a happy, successful life, right? But no matter what we do, we never seem to feel like we're caught up, right? So, but the reality is that we're not living in survival mode anymore. The wild animals aren't chasing us. We're not hunting to get our food. We don't have to look for shelter for safety and warmth. We can go to the grocery store. We have heating and we have AC to keep us if it gets too cold or too warm, right? But then, so the question is, why are we so stressed out then, right? Um, and this is the piece that I really want to share with you about a lot of our physical sicknesses that we're dealing with. That when we start to deal with our mental, emotional issues, our physical symptoms can actually resolve. And that is exactly what I experienced in Costa Rica. With my internal personal self-healing work in those 4 years, I was literally able to resolve my allergic reaction. And that was still happening after, 2.5 years and then 4 years into Costa Rica. So it was really intense. And just to tell you what would happen is my face, when it first happened, would blow up, my eyes would glue shut, and then it was kind of like weeping poison oak across my whole top of my head, and my ears would double in size. And if I even like scratched my hair, I would rip my hair out. So it was pretty intense. And it didn't happen all the time, but it was recurring, and so, with all these pieces, is what I recognized is that I literally was able to resolve my allergic reaction by working with my heartache and loss. That my physical symptoms were a result of my heartache and loss. Um, Doing this work, what I recognized is that when my face would start to burn and swell and then go into that place, I would do the work and I literally, without taking any kind of herbs or any kind of Western medication, the burning would come down. And as I tended to myself and gave myself the needs and dealt with my feelings and emotions, it would just resolve. So that was pretty miraculous to see that happening. And I still have to practice it all the time. So when new things come up, I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I come back to my more internal self and work with the feelings and emotions inside there. And I see that I come back into my center and then I'm able to step into the world in a different way.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
remember you were telling me like the work that you do, like without any EpiPen or anything like that, within minutes, you could just see like that swelling and the redness just like going down and totally resolving, which is like amazing, you know. And as I mentioned, I've seen you do some pretty, just absolutely amazing things when I was a student, shadowing and learning from you. And so, in terms of energy, I'd just like to take a moment to offer an analogy about both acupuncture and other energy work. So, for our viewers, think about our brain waves. They're a form of electrical energy, and as are the neurons that fire these tiny electrical charges. Now, imagine what happens if a plug to a lamp is loose in the wall socket. Then the light can flicker off and on, and the light won't work properly. So, like that loose connection, if our brain waves aren't functioning properly, we can have all kinds of mental, emotional, and physical problems. Our heartbeat is also stimulated by the electrical energy sent through the nerves. If that electrical energy signal is blocked or compromised, the heart won't beat normally. In fact, even our muscles contract by electrical energy impulses. If that electrical energy signal isn't working properly, the in paralysis. The muscles are still there, but they can't move if the signal isn't getting through. So, energy, whether electrical or other forms, affects us in many different ways, including physically. And I think that some of the work that you do in terms of really helping to uh, identify where energy could be stuck in the body, like for example in the stomach, uh, energy that's maybe stuck in their stomach, and then as a result they could start to have pain, or they could start to have nausea, and then when you treat that, I've seen those things then resolve, which is totally amazing. uh, so when I was a student mentoring with you, I just saw you do some amazing healing work with patients. um, why is the work that you do so powerful and effective?
Well, that the thing that I do is simply this, is that whatever symptoms or issues or sicknesses that you're dealing with, my main goal is to reconnect you to your natural ability to heal yourself. Um, the body's a natural ability to heal itself. And what I mean by this is what I was speaking about before, is that in our modern day, most everybody that comes to see me is in some capacity overwhelmed, stressed out, and trying to keep up with all the balls rolling. It's kind of like, the analogy I'd give is like if you had a dam and you're just trying to hold it up, and you're just trying to keep everything going, all the balls rolling in your life, and all of a sudden there's a leak, right? And then you're like, oh, well, I need to plug up that hole. And then as that you're plugging up that hole, and then another hole, and after a while, you only have 10 fingers and 10 toes, and you can only hold up so much, right? And that's that kind of exhaustion that I was talking about, that was happening with me when I got to that breaking point in Costa Rica, right? And so that we just feel overwhelmed, and then it diminishes our ability to be calm and centered and fully present in our day-to-day lives, for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for the communities that we live in. So eventually, as I shared with you my own personal experience, this energetic or spiritual exhaustion can lead to physical damage. Can do to our heart, the damage it can do to our heart and other organs. You can see how this can manifest into physical symptoms, right? Energy is as real as our physical body. So if I only consider physical symptoms, then it's just like putting a Band-Aid on a wound. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it's okay, or it's gone away. And that's why you'll never see me directly treating symptoms. I diagnose and treat the underlying dysfunctional energy that's behind the symptoms. And that's where the medicine becomes so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and just want to pause just for a little bit here to remind our viewers that if you have any questions, if you want to contact Mary, we will have a link to her website in the post, so you can definitely contact her. And if you have questions for me, I do find that people do call and talk with me after viewing a video or two, or visiting our website, and then become patients. Please feel free to schedule a no-charge phone consultation with me. All the contact information is on our Facebook page. I also encourage you to visit the online supplement store. I found it as a fundraiser for special needs children. All the vitamins, herbs, and supplements on there are tested for purity by independent labs. There's a 20% discount, and our store is the only one where proceeds go towards helping special needs families with the cost of their child's treatment. So the store is on our website at drtaketa-wong.com. That's drtaketa-wong.com. Getting back to talking with Mary, as I mentioned, I've seen you do some absolutely amazing things, so I'm really excited for you to share. If you could just share some examples of cases that would, I think, enlighten our viewers, to give some concrete ideas of what's possible and what you've seen in the work that you do.
Okay. One case that comes to mind is, again, someone coming in with, some really intense physical symptoms, and then working with them energetically. So I had a man that came in, and he called it back pain when he first came in. And then when he described it to me, he said it's like, it's kind of like when you were talking about that lamp short circuiting because it's not plugged in completely. He would get these electrical shocks in his back, up and down his spine, and they would come and go. And in the end, I never treated that physically. I didn't do any physical acupuncture on the muscles or the nervous system in that area. What we worked with was the emotional component that was behind it. And as we did the work, what came up for him was some old stories from his childhood, traumas that were unresolved. And one of the things or the statements that he had created or interpretation was that he was not worthy enough to be here, that he wasn't good enough. And then there was a piece of resentment that came with that, and the emotions that came with that. And so when we start to work with that emotional piece and resolve it and have him release it, his symptoms went away. Mm-hmm. And that's just it. It's like I didn't even do anything that had to do with the physical symptoms, and the electrical shocks started to go away. And then the great thing about that, even more with the story, is that I worked for a while, so much so that he got used to knowing how to do this process, right? So he started to do his own, and when I moved away, he didn't have me there all the time. He couldn't make appointments, and so we would talk on the phone a little bit. And he said, "I have another thing coming up." He's like, and I forgot to tell you. I mean, they come off and on, but it's happening very intensely right now. I'm having really bad hemorrhoids. And so we talked about it a little bit, and then it came up again. It was in a different way, resentment. And so I was like, okay, hopefully, he'll get some help. And then a month later, I got on the phone with him just to see how he was doing. He's like, and I'm like, well, how's everything going? And I was like, well, maybe I'll send you some herbs and some other things, to help you with your hemorrhoids. And he's like, they're gone, Mary. And I was like, what happened? He's like, I let go of the resentment and I'm done. I was like, wow. It's like my patients are just really taking off and doing their own thing. And that's just it. It's like this work that I'm doing is not just about like, okay, come in and you've got to do this process with me and you have to work with me. It's like, I'm just giving you the information. I'm guiding you. And then once you understand what's going on and you come into a place of awareness, then everything can change. And then you can start to do these things for yourself. And that's why I was able to do that in Costa Rica. Before I went to Costa Rica, I did do work. I did that kind of personal work on myself, the energy work, and I could see the results. But I also had other people, my mentors in where I lived, and suddenly they were gone. So it's like it made me realize that I was capable myself of doing that. And that's the whole point, is that in all this work that we do, is that we want to have the ability to empower ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that was one case.
Could I pause you really quick? There was a question that came up in the chat from one of the viewers, asking about, like, you're talking about the work that you do. So, I think it's kind of this amorphous thing that people don't know. So what is it that you're actually doing? Like, someone comes in and like, what are you actually, I guess, doing? Okay. I don't know if you can explain that.
First of all, like with the work that I do, I'm always, when people are telling me all their symptoms, right? I have palpitations, I have hepatitis C, I have insomnia, I can't, I get really anxious, or I have panic attacks, or I have this chronic disease, that kind of thing. I'm listening to everything that's going on for them. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at, as we said, these emotional pieces. And so when I start to do that work, I'm looking at the emotional patterns that are underneath it. Because when you start to study Chinese medicine and all these traditional medicines, they know how to relate energetic patterns of emotional disturbances and trauma to those physical symptoms. And so, but in an even more concrete sense, we talk about acupuncture. People have had experience with that. When you put a needle in someone, right? A lot of people, what they experience is like, oh yeah, acupuncture is for back pain or for something. And they put a needle in that spot, right? So that kind of makes sense. It's like they put a needle in that spot and then it starts to pulse and then the pain goes away. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, but what we have to understand is that when you look at the totality of Chinese medicine or all traditional medicines, they're not just treating on a physical level. We are human beings that have spirit within body, right? So we're mind, body, and spirit, and we have to tend to all of it. So for every point that you put in, whether that practitioner has learned it in that way, that point, that acupuncture point, and using that needle like a radio dial to kind of realign that fuzzy static radio into like a clear frequency, it is also not only for physical maladies, but for mental and emotional, spiritual recovery, right? And so something is off and the river's not flowing. we put a needle and it's like, oh, there's pain, and we get the river to flow again, right? But if there's emotional components, like if we're scared or something happens, we contract, right? And as soon as we contract, our muscles contract. And so if we do that over time, that pattern for every time we're afraid of a specific thing maybe becomes into a tension into the neck or the back. And then we hold our bodies that way all the time, right? It starts to get more and more tense. And then not only that, deeper into not just into the muscle, but maybe into the fascia, into the nerves. And then it starts to affect even deeper. And then from a symptom becomes illness or a disease, right? Because if we have that stagnation long enough, then it goes into a place where it's like, wow, this dysfunction's been happening for a long time, but now we're not only blocking this river, now energy's not going to the heart, or it's not going to the kidney because it's been blocked for 5 years, right? Because we have that pattern, and then we get into more sicknesses. And so that's kind of the thread or the connection, starting from these energetic places that we are in, that when we come into an imbalance or dysfunction, it can eventually become a physical ailment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know that you do acupuncture. I know you use Chinese herbs, you use homeopathic medicines, holding your hands over a person's body or things like that, helping to. I know that you can often sense where energy might be stuck or not flowing well in a person, and then just using that to help clear out places where the energy is stuck, and then things can start to flow, and then they can physically or mentally, emotionally feel better. So I know that people may still have questions about what that looks like, but
Uh-huh.
I mean, basically, you're using acupuncture in on a very different level than I think a lot of other people have experienced it as. So those are some, I think, the actual things that you do. Could you just share with us quickly, like a really quick, like a second case of a patient you
Another,
work with? Yeah.
uh, okay. Uh, Another case I think that would be good, again, working on the emotional level as well, is and again, it's not so much a level understand what the emotional pieces are, but it's more important that we're able to release that trauma out of our body, right? Or the stagnation or the emotions that are built up in there. So for example, I had a patient that came in. He was a Vietnam vet. He had hepatitis C, and sort of dealing with the symptoms of that. And he had diabetes to the point that he had neuropathy in his feet. So that's one of the more severe symptoms you can get when the diabetes becomes more extreme. And then on top of that, he found out that he had liver cancer that was had metastasized to the lung and the kidneys. So by the time he came to see me, the doctors had said he had 6 months to live, basically. So that's a pretty extreme diagnosis, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
when he came to see me, I started working with him, and again, I didn't physically treat the cancer. I actually didn't even, I did use herbs, but I looked at the energetic pattern of where he's stuck in his liver because he had the hepatitis and all that. And I used the herbs in that way. I used the energetic pattern to unblock it. And when I did the acupuncture, I did spiritual emotional healing acupuncture. And literally, like during those sessions, you know, when we're trying to dump our toxins, we'll do it through like the sweat and things like that. So he would get on the table and I'd do the needles and he'd be like, I need towels. And I'd try to bring towels and he'd put them under his armpit because he was just detoxing everywhere and sweating. And so after about 3 or 4 sessions, he couldn't get in with, so he's going through all these different processes. And after the second session, actually, I knew that something had shifted spiritually and emotionally for him and had released. And so I went down to the bottom of his feet and I said, can you feel my hands? And his neuropathy was gone. So after the second treatment, the neuropathy went away. And then I had some mentorships as Kat was part of them. And he came to see one of my interns that I was supervising because he couldn't fit into my schedule. And then she came out after seeing him. She was like, I can't deal with him. He's like, he's just so angry, you know? And I said, well, he's going through a lot here, and he's been given this terminal uh, diagnosis. And so I kept working with that anger piece. And if you learn about Chinese medicine, the liver has everything to do with anger, right? So we're releasing this out of the liver, basically. And so he came to see me for 2 more sessions. And again, I did not treat the diagnosis of cancer or hepatitis. I treated his liver. I treated his anger. I helped release that. And then she came to see him. Then he came in again for the internship, and she came back to me after seeing him after maybe 3 more sessions. She's like, he's purring like a cat. What happened? You know? And so then after that, it's like the anger moved out. We worked through that. And then 2 months later, after treating him, consecutively every week, he went back to his doctors. They did a CAT scan, and all the cancer markers were gone. There was the white markers in the lung and the kidneys where it was white, and then metastasized were gone. The markers and all the markers came back. Like on the scan came back, but all the cancer markers that they do the labs were gone. And he looked at them. He's like, "Did you have the right person?" They couldn't believe it had disappeared. And and then and the only thing that he had left was a little bit like discoloration in the liver, which had to do with the hepatitis C, which we continued to work with afterwards. But again, this is a very extreme example when things happen very quickly within 4 months. But he's still walking around now, right? And so this is that energetic medicine. It's the organizing principle and has hierarchy over the physical, right? And so if we start to work with the root of it, rather than chasing these symptoms and putting band-aids on it, we're going to get real results. And not just results for like, oh, I'm so glad that symptom went away, but I'm so in my center and I'm living and thriving and being everything that I am, right? That's what we want. That's the full potential of the human being, right? Is that we want us to come into our heart space, our heart's mandate, and our soul purpose. And we can't do that if we're constantly having symptoms and being ill, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. And like so many other amazing things, like I said, when I was a student. So for our viewers, I trust our discussion about acupuncture and how it can treat not only the mental emotional aspects, but by addressing the mental and emotional aspects can help with physical diseases and conditions as well. So I trust this discussion has been useful for you. You're welcome to talk with Mary. Again, we will put a link to her webpage in this post. You're welcome to talk with me personally if you have any questions for me about any health concerns that you have, so that you too can feel empowered with your health. All the contact information is on our Facebook page. Also, please remember to visit our online supplement store, which is on our website at drtaketa-wong.com. Our prices are very competitive, and the proceeds go to helping children with special needs with their medical treatment. A link is in the post with this video. So mahalo to all our viewers, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Again, thank you so much, Mary, for being here today with us.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.